Yeah, again, good evening, everyone. I'm Jashika, and on behalf of Science Club, I welcome you all to this eighth alumni session. Today, we have with us Anurag Mishra, who is an Indian Forest Service officer. Uh, Introducing him, I would like to say like he graduated from ISER in 2015. After that, he worked at NCBS Bangalore. Then he went to Switzerland, ETH Zurich, to work more about his research interest, that is primarily ecology and evolutionary biology. After that, till 2017, he was there in Switzerland. Then he came back to India, and I think it was his like second attempt. Yeah, it was his second attempt, and he passed IFS exam with flying colors, securing a rank of All India sixth. So he secured All India sixth rank just because of his passion, I should say consistency, because it was his second attempt. So yeah. So over to you. I welcome you Anurag to this session.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
okay, so
So, yeah, you can start asking questions or whatever you have. I mean, I don't have much to say. It's good if it's an interactive session.
okay, we got our first question already. It's from Amish. Becoming an
Mhm.
IFS officer, was this your dream since childhood, or like it was a sudden decision life made you to go that way?
Funny question. Uh, I think this time last almost a decade back, I was. Is Ramana Place taking the Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary, or that has been stopped? Yeah, like for the summer vacations, you used to take like interested people every batch for ecology research in Arunachal Pradesh. So, are there any ecology revolution people here, like people who are specializing in that way?
No, I think he does not. He does not take it.
Okay, so yeah, so back then he used to, and ours was the first batch who went like almost 12, 13 of us. I was always interested in biodiversity, herpetofauna, especially snakes, lizards, amphibians, like almost since I was in class fifth or sixth. So ISOR was pretty much my first choice that way to join after 12th. But I never wanted to join a government job because my father was in a government job. He was an engineer in the state government. So seeing his life, it wasn't particularly that great. So I never wanted to join a government job actually. But when I was in ISER, like even till the fourth year, I was very sure I want to do a PhD. I want to go that traditional PhD postdoc faculty line. But in my fifth year, I realized that research was not my thing. When I was doing research full time, and when fieldwork stopped. So earlier, every summer vacation I went and spent in Arunachal Pradesh under Ramana's guidance. And basically, for those 2 months of being in the forest, I was okay with doing all the lab slavery, so to say. But after that, I still joined a PhD because everyone was applying for a PhD, and it seemed like if you're not applying for a PhD, you're kind of dumb. And I don't know, again, I don't know how it is now because it's been like 5, 6 years since I passed out. But do you guys have you know, some sort of organization that helps you secure jobs outside academia once you finish your fifth year?
Yeah, there is CDC career development thing, but it's not very active as far as I know.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the like I have very few complaints from my ISO time, but one of them was that no one's really supportive if you're seeking careers outside of that traditional PhD route. So after that also I applied for a few places, but I wasn't very happy with all the places I got in for PhD. So I joined Uma Ramakrishnan's lab in MCBS, which was again a primarily ecology evolution lab. And then I next year I got into ETH, and again in ETH I realized that once I got in that everyone was very like, congrats, ETH, lot of money, great name, top 10 university and all that. Once all of that died down, I realized I really don't like research. And also, I mean,
So you were doing
that,
internships. You were doing internships
no,
at both.
I started a PhD at ETH. There
Okay,
was
and
a project
NCBS that was
fellow,
an
sorry?
internship. NCBS that
Yeah,
was an
NCBS
internship.
was NCBS was a project fellow.
Okay,
And
right.
ETH had started a PhD actually.
Okay.
But um, so around that time also, I mean, a lot of jobs in ecology evolution are also very like short term, unpaid, you name it, all kinds of bad things in employment, so to say. So, I mean, my family background was not such that I could do unpaid work after a master's degree. So, I mean, I just thought forest service would be the best. Like, whatever work I do, I'd be close to a jungle. I'm very passionate about wildlife photography, filmmaking, and like using visual media for conservation, etc. So, mm, I just thought IFS would be the best career choice at this point. So, yeah, I mean, it was funny that I came around to preparing for a government job. My family laughed at me after all the things I told them. But yeah,
So
here I am.
finished your PhD or
No, no, I left after 1 year.
after 1 year? Okay, and then you
Yeah.
started preparing for the exam straight away.
Not really. I
Okay.
left there because I wasn't liking the PhD, honestly. Like, it wasn't going in a way that I would have liked, and I didn't have full ownership. My guide wanted me to do certain things which I didn't think would help me if I applied back for a postdoc in India. That would get her job done. Like, she could give answers to her funding agencies, but it was all repetitive research, and I don't think I could have secured a job back in ISO Pune or NCBS, let's say, if I did work of that kind for my PhD. So I left there, I came back, and I thought I would apply again, but it just got tiring. Like all this, I don't know how many of you are in the PhD application process, but writing SOP, compiling all that application, keeping writing for recommendation letters again and again and again. It just got on my nerves after a time, and I didn't think it was worth it anymore because I wasn't liking the research. Research in general, I mean, I don't miss doing science really.
Hmm. Interesting.
So, as a follow-up
So
question, did you try? Sorry, Akash. Like,
no,
you
no,
can
sorry,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
Yeah. Did you try any other career choice, like before IFOS, like Indian Forest Service?
No, not really. My first attempt actually went up. I hadn't prepared properly. So I remember almost after you go to Switzerland once, the money is so good that you can't go to any other country. Okay, the PhD salary. So I started applying for random things in Switzerland, anything ecology evolution related, and I thought maybe I would go there while earning some money. I would make a more informed choice about my career if I want to come back later or whatever. Taking time off just to study just seemed very weird at that point. So I actually started preparing for forest service full time, let's say only around December. Till then, it was more an
December.
identity crisis for me because I always thought I want to be a scientist, but at that point, I just thought, no, not really. So it took me a while to get used to that. Yeah,
Sorry,
it
when
is.
did you when did you started preparing for the exam? Sorry, I missed that part.
Uh, I mean, technically 2017 August, but like my whole heart was not into it. I started preparing a bit more seriously after Diwali that year. Then probably around February, I decided that now that the attempt is in 4 more months, I might as well give it my best shot. I had cleared the cutoff for the civil service that year, but I could not clear the cutoff for forest service that year. But I did okayish, but obviously it was quite short of the forest service cutoff. So after that, I decided, but at least that attempt helped me figure out the mistakes and all that. So next year, when I prepared full time and like much more rigorously, the mistakes that I made that time definitely helped. So I can't say that I studied properly only for 1 year.
Right. So you are in the service from 2019.
I gave the exam
I
in
mean, there will be
2019, so that makes it
yeah,
2020 batch.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right. Hmm. Yeah. So how is that experience been? Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Experience in the academy?
No. Yeah. Basically, academy and then whatever you're doing right now. Yeah. Like, can you tell more about what you're doing? Stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can only tell good things because when you join a government service, you sign a contract that says you can't criticize in public.
Right. Sure.
Okay, but let's just say, in the way of constructive criticism, I wish the academy had more in the way of giving knowledge. Like the courses here seem more a formality, and most of the attention is on, you know, grooming, so to say,
Hmm.
discipline, punctuality, and all that. Um, but we are taken on tours regularly. That's the best feature of the IFS training. So last month we went on a tour to Gujarat and Rajasthan. We went to Desert National Park, Marine National Park,
Hmm.
um, Gir Gir Sanctuary,
Hmm.
and before that we went to Corbett. A lot of the training, I mean the traveling part, has been messed up because of COVID. But 21st November again we're leaving for East India, Jharkhand, Odisha, Assam, all that. And after that, we have a South India trip. So the trips are the best part of the training. Amazing sports facilities, like really good sports facilities. I've been very into sports from the ISET days. So we have like badminton courts, tennis courts, squash courts, a really nice football field.
Hmm. Great.
So that's the best part of the training for me, I would say. But we also have to wake up at 6:30 every morning. There's PT and all that. Uh, the less said about that, the better.
Hello, Anurag.
Okay, let me just check.
Uh,
Yeah, hi.
yeah, I am Bhushan, second year student. I want to ask that did you
Hi,
take
Bhushan.
any uh, coaching for IFOS exam?
Okay, so when I came back from Switzerland, I was still jet lagged for almost a month. I didn't do anything to change my schedule. So, as a knee-jerk reaction, I joined a coaching, which was actually more counterproductive if I think in the long run. And in my second attempt, I didn't go to any coaching. So I don't think if you are trying only for forest service, like personally, if you ask me, only for forest service, you don't need coaching at all. But again, in my case, if you're preparing for civil service as well, like IS, IPS, and all that, then I think doing answer writing practice can help. If you join a coaching institute and do answer writing practice, that could help. But studying the basic materials, the classroom module of it, I personally don't think coaching has any role to play. Also, the exam is diversifying a lot. They're changing patterns, and coaching is mostly stuck in how the exam used to be 7 or 8 years back at any given point of time. So that way, I mean, all the people who get a good rank, they would have gotten that rank without coaching also, is what I'm saying. Like coaching doesn't really play a huge role in success unless you don't have a knack for discipline and you can't stay um, consistent in your preparation. So the most important thing here is not intelligence but consistency. Like you need to keep going at it. You should not treat this as a knowledge, the preparation phase. You should not treat this as a knowledge gathering exercise. More like think of what is needed to clear the exam.
Is there a written type question also in exam for IFOS?
The prelims is MCQs. The Forest Service mains, there's mains and interview also. So mains is all written, long answers.
What sort of question they ask?
You can check the syllabus. You can check the previous year questions on the UPSC website. It's all there, very well organized.
Okay, thank you. And also, does the academic grades matter there?
My grades are quite terrible right now, so I hope not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, wait.
So
Someone
Amish
has
has a
asked
question.
me.
Yeah, question from Amish.
You are a third year. Should you prepare from now? Wait till the start of fifth year. Um, I would say start reading the newspaper. What are you interested in, forest service or civil service? Just let me know that, and then I think I can guide you better. I only
Uh,
prepared for the forest service.
can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in fifth year, like you just recognize that you are not into research. So like now only I am, what can I say, knowing to come forward that I'm not into research, like I'm in third year. So like I'm just preparing for
Okay.
the like a full IAS or IPS or the IFS exam, particularly sticking towards the IFS exam.
You're particularly leaning towards the forest service.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, a lot of people, forest service is a backup for them. They're primarily preparing for the AS and PS, the civil service. But if you're preparing only for forest service, then even reading the newspaper and all that is not that particularly important. What you can do right now is choose your optional and start getting more thorough with it. Someone had asked my optional also, it is zoology and forestry. But the ISA curriculum really doesn't give you much to, doesn't help much for the UPSC optional curriculum because it's very traditional BSc in that way.
Okay. Yeah.
So just it's important that you look into the syllabus and the previous year questions. Like the pattern doesn't stray much from that. And if you see the previous year questions again, zoology, for example, almost you can answer 70 to 80% questions if you just go through the previous year questions.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So you can start reading the newspaper. That gives you a good idea about things. You can start going through the NCRTs. I had a couple of articles where I had my what do you call that, the book list. So you can check this website. It's run by my batchmates and seniors right now. So there are, I mean, if you see the archive, I have a couple of articles, one on zoology optional and one on prelims and how to approach each subject in prelims. So you'll get most of the preparation related queries all from there. Okay.
Sir, I have a question. How good
Yeah.
is the idea for preparing exclusively for Indian Forest Service than the conventional method for preparing for the both exams, like usual IAS, IPS, and
Well, it depends on what you want to join.
if we are more inclined towards the Forest Service, so if we want to exclusively prepare for that, how good that idea would be, or would you suggest preparing for both?
So if you're interested only in forest service, there's no point in preparing for both.
Okay.
See, this is how the exam differs, the civil service and forest service. The cutoff is much higher for forest service. Like you need to get at
Yeah.
least 6-7 questions correct compared to civil service. So that's there. But once you clear the cutoff for forest service, it's a relatively more straight path. But for civil service, the prelims is only the start. Civil service has 4 general studies papers, which pretty much is everything under the sun. And preparing for that takes a lot of effort, and you don't have to do any of that in forest service because if you forest service has a GK paper, but in forest service, the determining factor in the final merit list is mostly your optional. So if you do your optional properly, that's pretty much it. I did not study for the GK paper at all. It's similar to the prelims. So if you have done things thoroughly in prelims, then you just it's very factual. You just have to write some answers. But for example, the GS papers of civil service, there's a lot of analysis involved. You just can't write facts.
I was just
So,
being
I
a
mean,
little bit more specific. So studying for all those GS four GS papers, you're saying it's not of a great benefit for the Indian Forest Service exam, right?
It doesn't help at all for forest service. No, I mean, forget, doesn't help greatly. It doesn't help at all. I mean, GS4 is entirely ethics and no, ethics and moral integrity,
Yeah.
something like that. I forget. That's not useful at all for forest service. Like it's absolutely zero. And then in GS3, you're going to again, GS1 again as society, disaster management, again not needed at all for forest service. Then international relations almost never asked in forest service. So again, like iterate this, go through the previous year questions
Yeah.
and the syllabus and see, because it is really not, people don't have prepared for this, so you're still on the same boat. Like if it's an easy paper, it's a difficult paper, doesn't matter, you're still on the same boat. It's about inching ahead of your competitor here. Like the absolute marks don't matter at all.
Okay.
Someone asked me why did I choose ICER firsthand and why I chose ecology and evolution. Okay, I said at the beginning of the session that I have been interested in biodiversity from mostly when watching National Geographic documentaries, etc. Since I was in like class 5th or 6th. So I did not want to join IIT. Like even though I went for IIT coaching, I got all rightish IIT rank. I never wanted to do engineering. So and sometime around my 12th class, I found out about ICER and I just thought I would join ICER and I'll see what happens after that. But ICER was great. I got a lot of exposure. Being in Pune was great. There's so many naturalist groups and so many people interested. You go to Pashan Lake, there are always photographers. All these places around the Western Ghats, Tamini, Kars, Bombay is not very far away either. So that way it really helped me. And why I chose Eco and Evo? I actually chose ICER because I wanted to study Eco and Evo. It's not the other way around. So, and I was very fortunate, Ramana was taking people to Arunachal back then. So I was a part of a proper research project when I was 18. And all those things really helped me. And to further, as a 17-year-old, you're just fascinated, but then you start doing things more rigorously. Some of it is not as much like when you're doing things as routine, some things stop being fun. Like, for example, if you're analyzing genetic data and your program doesn't run, but it's still a part of the process, like doing things more rigorously. So that way, ICER was very, very helpful. And I'm not doing research right now, but I owe a lot to ICER for everything in my career, I guess. Pune in general, not just ICER. Even to NCBS for that matter of fact. But yeah.
Does ICER curriculum helps you in your exam, IOS exam?
Did ICER curriculum? Wait, you're asking if ICER curriculum helped me in the IFS exam?
Yeah.
In the mains, nothing at all. Because like I said, in ICER, the questions are very different. You have all our cool professors giving MCQs. Is Sudarshan Anand still around?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does it still give those, you know what kind of question papers I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah.
Multiple
If you
choice.
come from a place like that, in a government exam, will be absolutely slaughtered. I was from a biology background, but if you ask me process of mitosis, all the 4 phases, I won't remember. So those are the kind of things you need to answer in the IFS exam. So ICER curriculum isn't helpful for IFS exam, but I think the kind of ICER puts a lot of faith into you, first of all. Like all these first year undergrads let loose on lakhs worth of equipment. There's a lot of responsibility that placed in you, and I think that's how it really helps build personality. So that way, I don't think I'm scared of things. Like even though even I think research in general helps you do that because you're figuring out everything on a daily basis on your own. So even if things are difficult, I thought like, okay, I can do this, and I just need to figure out how to do it. So, I mean, in a tangible manner, no, ISA curriculum didn't help me, but it definitely helped me develop an outlook to tackle things. It definitely helped me in the interview, like, but again, interview is a small part of the overall marks that go into the list. So, I mean, my like I got good marks in the interview mostly because I had a career that was aligned with the broad mandate of the Forest Service, and it could have been ISA or could have been any other place, or it's just a background in ecology evolution that helped me. What was my fifth year project about? My fifth year project was on elevational segregation and phylogeography of frogs in Arunachal Pradesh. If you have any more questions about that, I can take them. Else I'll move on to the next question. Cost of Kulkarni. Okay,
Hello?
wait, I missed one question. Yeah.
I had one question. You said you lost interest in research after some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, was it the routine work of research which you did not like, or you did not like the field work and all?
Oh, I absolutely love field work. I think that's the reason I stayed on in research for a while. But let's just say it's the research atmosphere that I did not like much. All this, I mostly, let's just say I wasn't comfortable with how much power a single recommendation letter has on you, and that makes you do things that you don't always want to do for your guide. And that's what I mean. I wasn't comfortable with that, and then I mean, it wasn't worth going through all that stress of applying for funds, grants, positions, which are all scarce, especially at a time when I didn't think I liked it as much. And I'll be honest, I chose job security. I mean, I prioritized job security over job satisfaction when I switched research for a service. But the overall balance is probably better here. There are a lot of things I don't like here as well, but I wouldn't want to go back to research, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so you did not like the atmosphere basically in academia.
It's mostly the job-related stress, and I mean, again, you have. It's actually much more apparent when you are in a employment institute. I said it's just an educational institute right now. You have PhDs and all that, but the overwhelming majority is, of course, undergraduate students. But I mean, for example, I saw a colleague of mine in PhD who was in her third year. She hadn't finished her PhD. ETH PhDs are generally 3 years. And her guide basically strung the guide, I'm sure, was under pressure from her funding agencies. So she transferred us back to the PhD student, and she needs paper out of that PhD, and she will not let her leave. And there's no good. You won't get a recommendation letter unless your advisor is happy. And all of this creates a situation where the graduate student is really powerless and at the mercy of the advisor, unless the advisor is a great person, a great human being. But again, work pressure can do bad things to good human beings also. So yeah, those were basically the things I wasn't comfortable with. And there's also like after masters, there's a 6 month lag period before you get a PhD. After PhD, you get a 6 month lag period before postdoc. After postdoc, if you want to come back to India, once you've been trained in places like ISER, you would not like central universities. And the jobs in academia I mean, you can only come back and probably work and be satisfied with your work in places like ISER, NCPS, TFR. I can't think of any other place. Even like the CSIR institutes are not that great in terms of infra. So those jobs opening up every year are barely 20. And ISER is graduating, let's say, what, 280 in your batch a year. And let's say even like 10% of those want to join academia, there's still a massive competition for jobs. And not always like, and these selections are not almost always on merit. It's a lot of luck involved. So those are the statistics I was not very comfortable with when I made the switch.
Okay, so do you see a similar imbalance of power in your current job as well? I mean, if you have to obey your seniors always and all.
See, I have to obey, and it's not as chill atmosphere as academia is. But end of the day, no matter what happens, they can't stop my salary. And you have a lot more protection. Like whenever something goes wrong, you can appeal. You have the Central Administrative Tribunal that goes against you. You have the High Court that goes against you. You have the Supreme Court. So these are the. I mean, you of course have to listen to your seniors at all point. In fact, if a senior gives you a command in writing, you have to obey it. Otherwise, it counts as insubordination, and that you can be charged treated for that. But at no point does it affect your bread and butter. That's, I mean, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so
I have a question about the forest services.
yeah, go ahead.
What exactly does the job entail? Like, what will your duties be? I guess you.
Yeah, so I'm still in training, so I can't tell you from my own experience, so to say, but I can tell you from whatever I've seen so far from seniors, colleagues, and the field visits that we have done. A lot of it is ensuring the mandates of the few conservation or forest protection conservation related laws that we have in India. The Indian Forest Act, Forest Conservation Act, Wildlife Protection Act, the Environment Protection Act, there are 6 or 7 like that. And so most of these IAS, PS, FS, whatever it be, there are certain territorial positions and there are certain functional positions. So the functional positions in IFS, for example, are like DFO Wildlife, DFO Social Forestry, or again, it varies across states and places, so to say. So the territorial DFO basically is responsible for following all those laws under their jurisdiction. There is a territorial division under their jurisdiction. Sure, there's no illegal timber felling, and you have a lot of scope for development. Let's say there's degraded land lying around it and develop that. So these things are voluntary. Like if you don't do that, no one's going to tell you anything. But the routine things are mostly these permits or permits for timber, permits for, if there's someone constructing something and diverting forest land. There are like laws and statutes which direct how these things should be done properly. Otherwise, you can book offenses against them. But I feel these are all the boring work. Like the real developmental work comes later. Like for example, let's say you can start developmental work. You can involve some local communities if they're tribals or like underprivileged sections. Can involve them in some agroforestry or let's say something like honey collection, lac collection. You can start. Okay, wait, I got disconnected, right?
Yeah, I think we lost
you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And now you're
okay, sorry. Like, what was the last thing that you heard from my side? Please repeat that.
Something about honey collection?
Yeah. So let's say right now we're going to Desert National Park in our tour, and the forest officer who's there is entirely responsible for bringing the Great Indian Bustard back from the brink of extinction. So it all varies depending on the position you're in. and that's like a wildlife position. So if you have, let's say, you're posted in a protected area, tiger sanctuary, let's say, if you're in Corbett, then you manage the tiger census and you figure out ways to improve the habitat of tigers. The Corbett is an example of a park that has been managed very well historically, so you don't have a lot of work there. Let's say you go to a not so great reserve like Sariska, where the area is great, but there's not enough tigers present. So how can you modify that area? How can you make interventions to increase the density of tigers? And while a lot of the political will is mostly for tigers, under that disguise, you can get in funds for, let's say, neglected wildlife. You have this umbrella species like tiger. Using that front, you can get in funds and use them. Let's say in Sariska, you can have a caracal, particular very rare elusive cat that might go extinct if nothing is being done soon. You can focus money on that. So again, there is a lot of scope to do things. I told you the routine work that has to be done, but apart from that, there's a lot of other things that you can do. Does that answer your questions, or if you have any specific things that you want to ask, then you can go ahead.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay.
As a follow-up, would you say that a career in IFS would require more people skills than in academia, say?
I don't know why people think academia does not require people skills. I saw Uma is a person with wonderful people skills in NCBS, and I have seen PIs with good people skills. In fact, it's a lot more than the IFS in IAS and IPS. So in all of these areas, you need people skills. Your lives, there's a lot of lives. IFS when and you have tribals with a bad standard of living, you have to interact at different points of time with across the spectrum. So you should have people skills that way. But again, I think it's less in the IFS than the AS and PS. And academia would also do a lot if academia would do better with better people skills, in fact. Okay.
I have a small question. I know you're currently in training, but to what extent would an ISS officer have to be involved in, say, okay, what's the influence of politics on an ISS officer job?
Again, these are not questions that I can answer very honestly if this video goes up on YouTube later. But you can have my contact, and I'd be happy to talk to you. But I can give you my email address, and we can talk about this outside of this in a personal capacity. Any of you are free to message me about things that you have later on this email ID. It's the same. My ID on Instagram is also the same. So see, technically, politicians, you can always say no to politicians for whatever they say. But if a politician influences your seniors to give you orders, you can't say no to orders from your seniors. You can always say no to politicians. So that's in a nutshell. And in fact, most of the cases that get booked by forest officers are against politicians for land encroaching and all that. But again, it's complicated on the field. It's all very complicated on a day-to-day basis also.
Okay.
to like ask from a career perspective, so one of the reasons why I didn't chose to prepare for civil services or anything like that was this only ki, there is a lot of uh, uh, you know uh, quote unquote slavery, not even slavery, but like you will be under someone, and you will be under that uh, you know like you will be under some sort of pressure from whatever. I mean, we have heard stories about civil services. I haven't really, so I don't have any first hand experience, of course, but so that was one of the reasons. Can you just tell from the career perspective, ki, is this a major thing to worry about or not, like that kind of, from a career perspective? Or yeah,
Okay,
since
so
you said you
I
had
think a lot
experienced
of
pressure from your
these things.
guide as well.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't get you.
Because you said you experienced your
That's the
some
last bit.
pressure from, yeah. So you said you experienced some pressure from your PhD guide as well. So I mean, that I'm saying in that perspective. Okay, this kind of this yeah, this job kind of feels more liberative or what? I mean, yeah.
A government job, you're bound by rules and mandates all the time, so it's definitely not liberating. But the way I see it, the slavery I did in academia was unpaid, and the slavery that I do here is paid. Okay. So, but no, a lot of things in media about the services, especially because these things get a lot of media mileage. So a lot of negative things are highlighted all the time. But again, like it's only the bureaucracy in India, at least in India, the way it is now, they are the ones who hold the maximum power for bringing about change. Like even if, um, let's say, if the media says that a certain section of the bureaucracy is only interested in personal gain and not public service, but regardless of that, the only entity that still holds the capacity to make public change is the Indian bureaucracy. And whatever like development is happening in India, most of it is because of the bureaucracy, no matter how little percentage is motivated to do that. Again, as the media reports, this is not me saying this. So um, that
So if you're
that way,
motivated to do that,
again,
it's not. Yeah.
definitely yes. If you have like the ideas, but again, like a senior of mine told me, you would have like a lot of ideas when you go in, and you keep getting frustrated because most of them won't materialize or you won't be given a chance to put them into action. But over your career, if you can put into practice even 10% of your ideas, you should consider it a career. So,
Okay. That's a
it's
way to
like a lot of questions for that. But no, I think it's a popular perception that it's slavery. But see, there are a few things that bind you down. For example, All India Service Officer cannot leave the station without informing. Like you have to be there. You are one of the faces of the district, and you're constantly hounded by media for bites of information all the time. Again, this is less in the forest service than the AS and PS, and so there are a lot of avoidable things. Let's say that. But again, you have a lot of power also. So with great power does come great responsibility that way. Was in academia where my work was towards like generating basic ecological data that can be used in conservation. You can generate all the data and papers that you want and generate all the policy statements about conservation that you want. But if IFS officer chooses not to bother about that, none of those things are going to come into actual action.
Okay, this is Satyam. I wanted to know. Actually, I joined late, So my question may be repeated. So I wanted to know
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
where did you completed your PhD, and how did you come to UPSC journey? I think it might be repeated, but I wanted to know how you
Yeah,
completed
yeah,
PhD.
I think that was a long answer. You should just go through the recording later when it's available.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, what sort of qualities does the interviewer look into while taking the interview? Like, particularly speaking from the speaking skills perspective.
I don't think the difference is based on speaking skills, but I think our answer should be genuine because a lot of people join coaching and there's mock interviews, etc. So a lot of the answers are very mechanical and they keep hearing the same answer over and over again from every single candidate. So, like being genuine and honest about things and not showing that you know everything, like come across as a genuine candidate in a nutshell is what I'd say.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you share your, if there was like any interesting story about your interview, then it would be great if you can share.
Well, so my interview, um, let me remember what I was asked. I've been so far out from this preparation wala phase. Like a lot of my batchmates do these very far. It was mostly very technical because my application form said basically had all details of my education, employment, work experience, etc. So it was quite detailed that way. And I was asked about R&K selection in biology. Another question I was asked is what if I was the manager of a tiger reserve, what kind of data I would be looking for better management? Like, is the number of tigers enough? Then I was asked if I can go back to research. I was also asked that the government spends so much money on every candidate, and I said, do I think it's a waste now that I've decided to leave academia? So, yeah, that's all I can remember. I was asked certain questions about schemes for tribals in Odisha. I'm from Odisha. So, but anyway, if you come to the interview stage, there are certain things that you should prepare, but you need not worry about that right now at all.
Okay.
Okay. What about being an environmentalist instead of IFS? Wouldn't that be more free and independent? Yes, free and independent, yes. But again, like I said, unless IFS decides to implement what you're suggesting, no one cares. Like you don't have the power to make a change. You can make a change through activism, sure, but do you, as an environmentalist, again, like who's going to pay you? For me, a big thing was that my parents would not support me if I decided to be like a freelancer or something, or I was unemployed every 6 months. So if you are loaded, then you can be Greta Thunberg. Absolutely no problems in that. But do you have any follow-up questions on that? Do you have any specific questions, Pranav Maheshwari?
Not very specific, but I was thinking that okay, I'm not intending to what IFS exam.
See, like I said,
right
free
now.
and independent. The reason the people in bureaucracy are not free and independent is because they wield a lot of power. You can't have people with a lot of power going around free and independent because then power gets misused.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
But what do you mean by being an environmentalist? Like you can of course be a journalist. Like Sunita Narayan of Down to Earth. For example, you can be a researcher who raises their voice.
Exactly.
People
I
like
was
Kriti
actively
Karan.
interested in science, and I was also thinking if I can take up such activities that I'm interested other than research. So I was thinking, like for example, if I'm also interested in administration, but I don't want to pursue the IAS path because that could lead to a break on my research career at first, and then I would need to invest my time completely on this IAS preparation that I'm not sure if I would be able to complete to the end. So, like, would you suggest that
But
it
then there are no jobs in administration, so to say, apart from that Indian
exactly that's
administrative
why?
service.
So it's like if I fail and then I would have nothing. I can't go back to research either, and I would have nothing on the job side either.
That's always a yeah. I mean, I was also that was a problem that I was also facing back then because if I don't clear the exam and then you're taken 2 years off without doing anything, then if you're trying to get back into research, it becomes difficult. Then you have to start at much lower position than from where you left. But it's not that difficult an exam if you're consistent.
Thanks for that.
Okay, let me check. Um, okay, there have been a lot of questions. So I answered this fifth year project. Forest service or primarily for civil service, I prepared only for the forest service. I didn't prepare at all for the civil service. Medical requirements for IFS, you can find that online actually. They have a detailed medical requirement thing, but most of the things are not that particular except you should have 6x6 vision with your spectacles or whatever. And you should not be colorblind and you should not have knock knees. These are the things that get you disqualified sometimes. Okay, is this a good combination, botany and forestry? Yes. Yes, botany and forestry is fine. PhD position in NCBS or ETH Zurich, do they look into your GPA? I'm sure they look into your GPA when they consider application, especially if you don't have research experience. GPA takes a higher importance in your application. But if you have papers and all that, and you have a previous, so the thing that matters the most is the professor should know you. So if you have contacted them before, if you have done internships with them before, then it's easiest to get in. Like they know how you are in the lab. GPA is not a good indicator of how good someone would be in research. It's not even an indicator at all. In fact, I would say it's just an indicator of how good you are in passing exams. But when you have nothing else on your CV, GPA, and you have a bad GPA, then your application is immediately thrown out. What was my CGPA? My CGPA was 8.3 finally, but I had almost a 9.6 or something in biology. So I had a decent overall CGPA and a great biology CGPA. So my GPA was never a problem for me that way. How does a day in my life go at present times? I had mentioned this. Should just go through the recording. Expected routine, again, I covered this one. How much routine work is there in forest service? Again, I think I've answered this. And were there GPA cutoffs for the PhD programs that I applied to? No, the universities never specify a GPA cutoff actually. You could check some of the blogs and all these communities where people would tell you the so-called informal GPA of the college that you're applying to. There are the statistics of what was the last CGPA that made it to so-and-so college. But the universities get money when you apply, so why would they restrict you? How was my academic performance in ICER? It was okay. Okay, I think I've come to the end of these questions, so people can go ahead, ask on the mic or more in the chat box. How many months does one need to spend on preparing for IFS? Okay, for prelims, I think you need around 8 months. 8 months of like 8 to 10 hours preparation every day. I used to take a break every week, like one day, have to study for 6 days, take 1 day off. These breaks are also necessary so we don't burn out. And whatever you study, it should be the same routine, like more or less. It takes around 8 months for the prelims, and people have cleared it in less. I'm just saying for mine. People have cleared it in less, people haven't cleared it in more. So I'm just telling you what I did. Yeah, 8 months for prelims, and depending on your optional, like I think zoology would take me around 4 to 5 months, forestry around 1 month, and yeah, that's about it. So there are 6 months for preparing. Sorry, there's about 5 to 6 months between prelims and mains, and I think 5 to 6 months is enough for studying 2 optionals. You should study in a smart manner. Like I said, you study to clear the exam, not to gather knowledge. You need to read the syllabus and previous year questions to make sure that you're not putting in effort where it is not going to give you an output in terms of marks in the exam. Should one start optionals or general knowledge and NCERTs? So for optionals, there are no optionals in prelims. So while you can start optionals, I think it's a better idea to start with NCERTs. Again, I had sent you that being IFS 13, I think I typed it out, right? Yeah. So I have a list of all the books and materials that I followed, so you can look into that. But start with the basics. Like you can just start reading things without really bothering to retain for a while, especially if you are in your third, fourth, fifth year, whatever. And once you have a certain framework, you can start being more rigorous. But the point is, like even now, it cannot be like one weekend you study 6 hours and then you let go of it completely. Then 2 months later you study for 6 hours. That doesn't help. So it's better you study like even half an hour a day, or like you make a habit of just sticking to the newspaper every day. So whatever it is, it should be a habit. That's more important. Can IISER Pune ECS majors apply for IFS as they studies geology? Yeah, you can. As long as the course says science, you'll have some subject that you can mention there. So ECS you can mention, of course, like you have a bachelor's with geology was one of your subjects. That's completely fine. We did not have ECS during our time. How's that course going? What is it called? Earth and Climate Studies. Sciences.
Yeah, Earth and Climate Sciences.
Okay.
Yeah.
How, like, what percentage? What percentage of a batch generally goes for that now?
I would not have a great idea. So I'm like 2017 batch. So maybe 10 people out of 220. Maybe I don't have a great idea.
10%.
But
10 to 15%.
Okay.
10 to 15. Yeah. Yeah, but the courses are great. I mean, we studied them for our bachelor's, and I took one or two courses in my master's as well. They were very good courses. So yeah, the courses are good. You get a good amount of exposure. Yeah, I don't know if there is somebody majoring in ECS can come in. Yeah.
So like the majority is still chemistry to improve their GPA after 2 years.
Not sure.
Majority of the students take the physics actually, but
Yeah.
yeah, mostly few people take the chemistry even if they took the physics because to improve the GPA. And yeah, it is true that many people take the chemistry.
Chemistry courses is always chemistry courses, especially in third and fourth year, was like the band-aid. And you're messed up everything, you go to chemistry because everyone gets a somehow.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I had one question about the. So you said you must have tried about some jobs after you thought of dropping out of your PhD.
No, I actually did not. I was just like whatever jobs I found in Switzerland related to ecology evolution, I just applied, but they're all still academic.
Okay. Academic as in research assistant or something. I
mean, even if it was a 1 year position, I applied. because I just wanted to be paid while I cleared my mind about what I want to do next. I also missed out on a lot of traveling in Europe, so I wanted to go back to Europe.
Now you're traveling a lot
And
anyway. in India.
not as much as I would like, but again, Europe had a great football scene as well. I mean, so Europe was very good that way. It was very hard to leave because everything was great except the one thing I'd come there for. So yeah,
Yeah, it's very
I really
it's very
yeah, sorry,
strange
go on.
that it's very strange that ETH has that you experienced that kind of thing in
You
ETH.
know, no, actually, the people with the shittiest experiences are generally from these top demand colleges,
Okay.
honestly.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Can
I
you
mean,
elaborate more? Because
actually,
I'm somebody who is applying for PhD application, so yeah, it might be beneficial for
I know a friend who had a very bad experience in Stanford, and the so-called top 10 universities also have professors who are also under a lot of pressure. And again, like the always be, for example, in NCBS, if you don't publish, you are all aware of this scandal in NCBS, I guess, recent one.
Yeah, the one with the data falsification.
Iron, forging data with iron fist, that one. So
Yeah.
have you read this? I think it's called Leonard Snyder. There are some articles here about that particular thing. So again, in NCBS, it's a very publish or perish kind of atmosphere. I had asked my boss once, like, why don't you want to move to NCBS? Because I always kept complaining about lack of funds. Okay. And I told him like NCBS is better funds, like why don't you apply it there? And he said there are certain reasons I don't want to move to NCBS. And I mean, it's only 7-8 years later that I'm realizing what he meant. So the bigger the name, the higher on that QS University rankings of place is, the more publish or perish atmosphere it is. Again, that directly percolates down to your graduate students. That mostly means your interns are never paid and your interns are overworked. Most of the people, in fact, but again, it's very, this is a very, this is an averaged out thing that I'm saying. There are good labs. There are labs in NCBS where people are very, very happy. There are labs in ETH where people are very, very happy. So you don't mean to generalize, but from my PhD applying process, it's very when you are in ISOR, you want to go to a top 10 ranked place and all that. But the more important thing is that you have a personal equation with your advisor. I mean, your relationship will be lifelong. I mean, I you might think it's a joke now. I thought it's a joke back then when people told me the same thing, but it wasn't a joke. So you should be careful. You should talk to previous graduate students in that lab what they think. But the problem is many people don't talk about it frankly when you go there, and you should not join a lab without doing that research, because I had an offer from another place in Munich, and the only reason I joined ETH, to be honest, was the rank and the fact that they paid much more. Like Switzerland's salaries are almost unmatched anywhere else. And people who join the other lab are definitely happier than people who join the lab in ETH. So again, it's a call for you, like what you value more. So
yeah. Basically, you should research well about the guy that you're going to work with. I guess that's the
yeah. So when you finally get an interview call, I mean, they would obviously want to meet you and all that before they admit you. So it's actually much easier for the mall bio labs. I don't know. I can talk only about biology because ISAC one has a lot of extensive collaboration that way. So if your guide has a person that he works with extensively and you like their work, it's the best to go there because you always have someone So, I mean, not officially, but if you run into problems in a new lab, you can always talk to your guide here and they can sort of, repair that bridge for you. And also, I mean, I don't really want to sound negative about this. I'm just telling you like the things that I wished I had done, so to say. And you definitely should talk to the graduate students in that lab. Like, what's the culture there? Like, are you comfortable with that? There are many guides who are, I mean, there's a vast spectrum between micromanaging and not managing at all. All the big shot professors, they're mostly never available for their students. Is Shashidhara still around?
No.
Okay, I don't know if all the batches know him, but when he was there, like
He
his
left
students
recently, so we
Yeah,
know
he
who
left
he is.
recently.
Yeah, so when he was around, his students took almost 8 or 9 years to finish their PhD. He's of course like India's biggest name in developmental biology. All the people want, like, if they're doing their PhD in India in developmental biology, he was the guy everyone wanted to work with. But people barely met him once in 6 months because he was always traveling, giving lectures, and like he was basically done with his academic career. Nothing could touch him. So if you work with a young PI who has things to achieve, then it's actually much better from your career point of view.
Yeah, right.
Because the same thing happened to my friend who was in Stanford. He worked with someone who was like a global superstar, and always traveling all the time for conference here, conference there, barely ever in the lab. She would come in for one day, schedule meetings with all her 12 PhD students. You can't get much out of that. And a PhD is not supposed to be like that.
Right. Yeah.
A good example of a person in ICER who I thought was a very ideal PhD guide is Thomas Pukadil. He was always in the lab, always available to his students. Is he still around? No. Even Girish and Richa lab that way were great. But again, I should not be doing name calling and saying this guy is good, this guy is bad. They're all great researchers. I'm just saying, like, what was the perception of them as a PhD guide? And again, this is a call you have to take yourself, like what you are comfortable with. But just do your research beforehand.
Thanks. Right. So why? Okay, then why didn't you look at jobs? I mean, were they unavailable, or you were not just interested?
No, I just did not want to put in the effort of all this SOP writing and all of that. It was very stressful.
No, I mean not academic jobs. Maybe some other kind of jobs. I mean, some I don't know. I don't know what are the options after a biology career.
There aren't a lot of options for good jobs after a degree in ecology, honestly. But I wanted to stay around. Like, I still wanted to have a job where I can, work in forests and all that. I still wanted to pursue my passion for wildlife photography, filmmaking, and all of that. So I just thought forest service would be the best balance of everything that I was looking for.
Right.
I mean, after having joined the job, I think it's still a great balance. There are certain bad days, sure, but that's there in every single job.
Yeah.
Hello, I just wanted to ask, is it possible to prepare for civil services while maintaining the ISER life, like while we are in say fourth or fifth year?
What do you mean by the ISER life? Can you
Like I don't know since I haven't been in campus till now, but then time management, managing the subjects,
I think if you're in online classes right now, it's great. See, ISER exams are not difficult to pass, but I don't think you should compromise your college life. I mean, I can't say tangibly what you would gain, but there's a lot of personality building that happens by, living the college life the way it should be lived includes making mistakes, making absolutely stupid decisions, and all that. Go a long way in shaping your personality in the long run. I mean, that includes drinking in the stadium or whatever, bunking classes, missing exams because you have less attendance, all of that. Like I've always been someone who advocates living life, making mistakes, whatever. Are people still drinking near the stadium?
I've heard of one instance, I think, but obviously there will be more.
Okay.
I guess there are very few people on campus to do that.
Yes,
Yeah,
people
like
do
there are
that.
only fifth years and PhD students and postdocs are only there. I mean, still the fourth years and other people are not on campus because of the COVID.
Our batch is one of the most notorious this way. Our batch, I think, is still the first batch in history who had a disco before the first semester midterm. We joined in October. We joined in August. We had a disco by October. So yeah, I fully support living your college life well.
Is it possible to have a good UPSC rank while having a decent CGPA, say, generally?
Decent CGPA.
Yeah, not maybe not very great, but a decent one.
Define a decent CGPA. 8.
8 to 8.5.
8 I think is actually very easy and nicer. I mean,
actually our grading system has changed. So the most recent 3 batches, I think, have a different grading system in that our A is a 9 grade point and not a 10. I think you guys had a 10.
oh, we had for a while O as a 10 and A as 9, and almost no one got an O. So, like when the DART fellowship came out, none of the people in our batch had a 9. And because of that, none of them got selected in DART. And that's when people like Ambika realized what they had done. So they changed back all the.
Knowledge is short-lived.
So they changed all the A's to 10 again. The problem that had happened is certain smart people like myself, we decided that the A is not worth it, so I might as well study for a B. Like A takes a lot of effort and only gives you 1 more point. So when all the A's were changed to 10, we were made to look very stupid. Is Ambika still around?
No, she's
No,
straight to
she is
the ISR Tirupati.
Oh, thank God. Good.
In 18 only. 18, yes, 18.
Okay,
But
great.
he was really very
Yeah.
tight as a dean. Professor, I don't know about professor. He was very tight dean. Take very harsh decision about the student.
Yeah, she also did some very, zero application of mind decisions like that O grade. But again, I don't think getting a B.
That grading system has changed again, I guess, for our juniors. So for us, it's
that key A is 10 and B is 8 kind of system. But for I think next batch onwards or next to next batch, the same system as yours, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
guess
don't think it's very difficult to get a 8 CGPA in ISR. You have to you just have to study before the exam. You get a 8. It's only if you want like 9 plus, then you have to put in some extra effort. But again, like passing exams is very different. Like, do you want to get a good CGPA or do you want to actually learn things? ISR gives you great opportunities to actually learn things and skills, but they don't always necessarily translate to CGPA. So that's again a judgment call you have to make. Like, what do you want? Is enough time, 6 month gap between BSMS degree and PhD application time enough? I don't think we should be taking time off to research about lab environments. We should be doing that like on the go. Like let's say you read a paper that you like, that's the kind of work you see yourself doing, then maybe you should immediately have, I mean, this is again something I hadn't done, but it's useful if you have like an Excel sheet right from the third, fourth year that you keep updating once in a while. Like you can note down the advisor, the university, and once in a while keep updating it when you come across someone that you would like to work with. I don't think anyone does this really, but looking back, 5, 6 years later, that
No,
seems a
people
useful
do.
thing to do.
People do that. People
You-
do that. I know people
Ah,
who do that. Yeah.
Are you one of them?
No, so I started in fourth year.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I mean,
that,
it's mostly the time when you read papers, right? I mean, when you read somebody's paper
yeah,
and you think they are
yeah.
useful, then you basically note them.
So that way, I don't think, I mean, this is not a full-time thing, right? So you come across, you like this person, it's like a half an hour thing, researching things. You can do it on your phone, whatever. So there's no point in taking a gap only for this.
Right. I think fifth year gives you ample time to. I mean, fifth year is all about that. I mean, doing this thing and uh, the internship. So,
I think I
so how was the?
worked the least in 5th year. Yeah, someone is asking a question.
So as compared to IFS, the UPS, the IPS and IAS exam would be tougher, as you said. Like there is just DS4 and stuff to prepare for the mains, right? So it will require more
Well, it's
time, and
it depends on the aptitude, what your aptitude is. If you're good at writing answers, like subjective answers, then like IS is actually easier than IFS because IFS requires a lot of facts and all that. But the competition is more in IAS to get those ranks. So again, like many people that don't clear the prelims, like people have problems with MCQs, solving MCQs, for example, and like for those people, IFS is much tougher because they'll never clear the prelims like that extra 10, 12 marks. So it depends on what your skills are. It's a separate set of, like it's not very separate, but if you put it under a microscope, then and in a very nuanced manner, the things that you need are a little bit different for both. So for example, if you're not very good at writing answers and you're good at like memorizing facts and producing them out, then IFS is an easy exam. But if you think you're very good at like composing answers on the spot, like bringing in different ideas and putting in a coherent answer together, all in a matter of 7 to 8 minutes, like you have to do in the GS paper, then of course you have an edge if you give the civil services exam. But again, like your aptitude for the job might be different, and the whatever skills that you have might be different. So you should not be choosing a job based on what your strengths in the exam are. The exam is just a one-time thing. The job you stick to for much longer.
Oh, one more question. Do you know other people from ISER Pune or like maybe ISER in general who are in administrative services and we can talk to?
Yeah, Grim Sani is on my senior batch in IFS.
Yeah,
He was in my junior batch, so he immediately joined Insights to prepare after, like he graduated in 2016. So he's posted in Maharashtra right now.
Yeah.
And he was preparing for civil service as his primary target.
Right.
So if you want to talk about civil services, then maybe you should talk to him actually. He would be the better guide.
We can have one session with with them, so that we can discuss more about civil services and all.
Yeah, I think like we had one session, not this talks. We had one of the session with like I forgot the name in the like one of the Instagram series, right? We had he had invited Agri. So, yeah. Praful invited for a talk.
Yeah, it was the Gupshup series, if I remember.
Yeah.
There's some other people who are preparing actually, but I don't know all of them.
To all these 17 people, like, please feel free to ask your doubts or any question that you have. Like, we are nearing the end of the session, so please don't hesitate.
Are there any more questions? You can hear me, right?
Yeah,
Again. Okay.
I don't think there are any more questions. So thank you everyone for staying with us for like more than an hour. Thank you, Anurag, for sparing your time for this session. It was wonderful. Thanks for providing insights about your journey, about your preparation, and all the honest and genuine thing that we would love to hear from a senior.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always like when I really miss ISO. Looking back on it, I didn't think I'd miss ISO when I got out of there. I just wanted to get out of there. But yeah, I mean, you have my email ID. If you need something, you can contact me. Feel free for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye bye.